Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review. And the reason I'm smiling today is because I'm going to be talking about the brand new War of the Worlds film, released on Amazon Prime on July the 30th, starring Ice Cube, for an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel from the 19th century. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the film, other adaptations of the film, my history with War of the Worlds, and where this film is already sitting within pop culture, by also trying to ask and answer a very difficult question which has cropped up recently. So I do want to hear people's thoughts on this, so please do comment them below. Off the grid for spoilers, talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to go into all of this. If you haven't seen this film, maybe you're never going to see this film, that's fine. I'm going to talk about it. You've probably seen clips from this film on social media. I'll be talking about those too. But as I said, it is an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, done as screenlife, which are, for those unfamiliar, films where you are essentially watching a screen the entire time, like someone's desktop, someone's computer, someone's phone. There tends to be a webcam or a camera on at all times to see the actor's performances, and it's played through that. So if you're unfamiliar with screenlife, very much boomed to it. The smallest of points during COVID, obviously everybody at home, and I believe the origins of this film is that this film was being made during COVID. Now it's 2025 now. I don't know how many years this has sat in post. I didn't even know this film was in production. I didn't know this film had been announced. I literally just suddenly had seen that there's an Ice Cube War of the Worlds film and it's terrible, and I was just going to let it go. And then everyone started talking about it, everyone started sharing clips, and people only started watching it, and it's took on a life of on its own. And people are calling it the worst film ever made. And I'm going to maybe answer that at the end of this video. But enough was enough, and I said, okay, I'm gonna watch it. If you've seen my Weapons or Freaky Friday review, you'll know I mentioned the fact that I cocked up my timing so I couldn't do a double bill at the cinema. So when I got home, whilst I was editing, I put this on after as my relaxing Friday night film rather than play a bit of PlayStation. So that's my origin of this. It wasn't some piteous, I can't wait to watch this because it's crap during work. This was, you know what, I'm going to chuck it on. I want to see if this film is as bad, because the problem I have with terrible films is at the end of it, it's a subjective opinion. And I think it's a word that's chucked over too much, but I'm going to answer at the end of the film, because I've got to talk about the story. And if you're unfamiliar with the story of War of the Worlds, this is when aliens from Mars come to Earth to attack and take over, and it very much began that story of the alien invasion. Rooted in literature. Before we had the radio version, which, you know, people thought in real life there'd been invasions. Before we've had film adaptations in the 1950s one, obviously we've had the Tom Cruise one. We've had TV shows in recent years. BBC did a faithful adaptation. I believe there was I don't think it was Disney Plus, but it's on Disney Plus here in the UK. There was a 3-season War of the Worlds as well. Safe to say it's been spoken about. And obviously you've got Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, which is a very famous musical. So I think a lot of people know the story. And unlike some book type of things, when something's been over adapted, if that's even a sentence, I'm never opposed to watching it. And this is a story I've always liked. I've got such fond memories of the 2005 one. And I will send people over. We did a phenomenal review for it during the Steven Spielberg retrospective. Probably one of my favourite videos I've ever done on this channel. And we had an absolute blast talking about the '05 film, and I recommend checking out that video if you are curious. I'm going to actually rewatch it this weekend because of this. So when the new one was suddenly out, I did sit there thinking, okay, screenlife, it's not for me. It's not my sort of, it's not any type of film I ever want to watch. But I like Ice Cube as a musician and as an actor. He's got some great comedic work, and what I had seen from this online was entering the room territory of discussion. They were fixated upon his performance. Every word is being studied and mocked under the sun. His facial reactions, the performance. Apparently there's stories that he didn't have anyone to work with, so he was doing all of his acting essentially, whether, I don't know if it's himself alone in the room with the camera, but I don't think the other cast were there or anything was present. So people believe he may have been reading it line by line, and that ends up going in the film. I do not know. But this doesn't just tackle the original story of War of the Worlds. This has a modern take on it. This has an Amazon product placement attempt. It has conspiracy theory attempts. It's got computer hackers. It has everything you could never think of that would be in a War of the Worlds film, but here we are discussing it. And I have to really talk about it now and get into the meat of why I'm doing this video. Is this the worst film ever made? And I can't say yes or no because I've not seen every film I've made. I'm not giving a non-answer. But I'm going to narrow it down to, is this the worst film I have ever seen in my life? Now, I've seen some truly terrible films. The first ever time I saw The Room was at Prince Charles, and I loved it because of how bad it was. But as a film, yes, it's awful. It's absolutely abysmal. But there's something behind that. The people were trying to make a film. There were intentions. It was just that bad that it took a life upon of its own. You've got movie 43, which I always speak about being the worst I've ever seen, which I never want to go back to. The only thing that made it worse was that it was full of A-listers. And I think when you have bigger names attached to these projects, it can be a lot nastier. When something is bad, it's truly bad, especially when the whole marketing is about how many great A-listers they've got in it. And I'll never forget the testicles on Hugh Jackman's face. So that's probably the bottom, if I'm honest, because I didn't enjoy it and I wouldn't go as watch it the Prince Charles. And this War of the Worlds, at the start, I did think, okay, there's an idea to do War of the Worlds in a modern 2025 way. There is a concept to how would War of the Worlds work today with modern technologies, but what this film goes on to do is quite possibly some of the most entertainingly awful things I've ever seen on the big screen. To have a subplot where one of the characters is an Amazon delivery driver and he has to fly a drone with a USB in to help end the virus to Ice Cube's apartment. Or, sorry, not his apartment, his block of where he is based. The consistent near deaths of his family, where he just gives a completely horrific reaction. And I'm not just saying, oh, bad actor, but it's comedic how some of his family, his children almost die and how he reacts to it. His reactions are in a life of their own. It will be clipped. It will be spoken about. And I think this film is going to the root of The Room. That I think this will be a film that people speak of because of how bad it is. But they speak of it because it's entertainingly bad rather than the boring bad type. And it is quite possibly the worst film I have ever seen in my life. Because when we're getting into a subplot about these hackers and that the government is the reason this is happening and they've hidden it under, and the one person who exposed all of this, who is this extreme hacker, think Anonymous with the masks, it's Ice Cube's son. And then Ice Cube joins them. And then it just goes from there was a concept to why was this a thing? Why was this film? I saw Universal's logo attached and I couldn't believe it. I thought this was straight to Prime. Now, whether Universal tried to hide this at the bottom of a bunker and Amazon were just like, we gave you loads of product placement, we need the film out, maybe that's how the conversation went. But it is terrible. I cannot wrap my head around how bad it is. I don't want to harp on the other actors that aren't Ice Cube. I mean, not talking like your big names, like Eva Longoria is in this, Clark Gregg's in this, there's other actors, but I'm not going to sort of hassle on like the people playing his family. There are probably kid actors that thought War of the Worlds, Ice Cube, why not? That could be a big career break. I'm not going to harp on them, but the script is bad, the story is bad. It's terrible from an adaptation point of view. It is absolutely not War of the Worlds. It has no business doing this. The tripods, the war machines, look like someone rendered them like at the start of uni on an old 10-year-old iMac or something. They look terrible. Again, budgetary constraints, sure, but it adds to the entertaining laughter of how bad this is. This is not how War of the Worlds film should look at all. And I would be curious at not a new War of the Worlds, because I love the Spielberg one, but I'm not against seeing adaptations of War of the Worlds. It's one of those things, like not Bond in that comparative, but I'd like to see someone's take on that story, and it's something you can do over and over and over again. And this was not it. This was that bad. And this is where I have to end this video. It was terrible. Do I recommend this film? I'm telling you this. If this one day screens at the Prince Charles Cinema, I might go. As long as I'm not the only person there, because I think this is something everyone's laughing at, everyone's fixated on. It's taken a while of its own. And for that, it maybe will stand the test of time. But a good film it's not and will never be. So that is me rounding out this review. I hope this wasn't taking the piss too much. I did want to talk about it. I think there's a fine line between, great films, but terrible entertaining films. And when people talk about desecrations of media, people spoke about the Star Wars sequels. People did talk about the Star Wars prequels. People talk about modern Star Trek. People talk about Fantastic Beasts. Anyone that's got an attachment to certain franchises that has had things that have maybe disappointed them or maybe things that's terrible. The Hobbit, for example, is another one. Rings of Power. all the corners of the internet where we've seen these conversations take place. Desecration's a word that people like to use. And whilst a lot of the time they can be poor, and they have been poor, a lot of the time it's just disappointed fanboys. In this case, you could look at the source material of H.G. Wells' novel, and you can say this was a desecration of that. It was not an adaptation to any means of the sun. They just got the War of the Worlds name and wanted the film to attach to it. That's what I'm going to round out on. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.